Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U-East Discovery, watching the strange ship approach through the darkness of space. The vessel looked like nothing he had ever seen before. It was shaped like a giant flower, with metal petals that opened and closed as it moved. Soft blue lights danced across its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. "Sir, they're responding to our greeting," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from the communications station. "The translation computer is working on their language now." Jake nodded and adjusted his uniform. This was humanity's first peaceful contact with the Zephyrian species. The aliens had sent a message 3 months ago, asking for help. Their home planet was dying, and they needed somewhere safe to go. Earth had agreed to meet with them and see what could be done. "Dr. Hamilton, are you ready?" Jake asked. Dr. Lisa Hamilton looked up from her tablet. She was the ship's expert on alien life forms, and she had been studying everything they knew about the Zephyrians for weeks. "As ready as we can be, Commander. Remember, they communicate mostly through light patterns on their bodies. The sounds they make are just for emphasis." The alien ship docked with the Discovery with surprising grace. Jake watched through the viewing port as the airlock cycled. His heart was beating fast. This was history in the making. The first Zephyrian to step through the airlock was tall and thin, about 7 feet high. Its body was covered in a hard shell that looked like green metal, but it moved like living tissue. 4 arms extended from its torso, each ending in delicate hands with too many fingers. Its head was elongated, with large black eyes that seemed to see everything at once. But what caught Jake's attention most were the lights. Patterns of blue, green, and yellow light moved across the alien's shell in waves. The lights pulsed and swirled, creating a display that was both beautiful and alien. "Welcome aboard the Discovery," Jake said, hoping the translator would work properly. "I am Commander Jake Morrison." The alien's lights shifted to a steady blue pattern. The translator crackled to life. "I am Speaker of Journeys. I speak for my people in this matter. We are grateful for your willingness to meet with us." More Zephyrians came through the airlock. Jake counted 12 adults and what looked like 3 younger ones. The young ones were smaller, and their light patterns were brighter and more active. They reminded Jake of excited children. Dr. Hamilton stepped forward with her scanner. "May I take some readings? It will help us understand your needs better." "Speaker of Journeys." Lights changed to a green pattern. "You may. We have brought genetic samples and medical information as well. We wish to be transparent in our request for aid." As the meeting progressed, Jake learned more about the Zephyrian situation. Their sun was dying faster than their scientists had predicted. They had maybe 50 years before their planet became uninhabitable. They were a peaceful people, skilled in biotechnology and energy manipulation. They offered to share their knowledge. In exchange for help finding a new home. The negotiations went well. Jake found the Zephyrians to be honest and reasonable. They weren't asking for Earth itself, just help finding a suitable planet, and perhaps some technology to help them adapt. It was during a break in the formal talks that Jake noticed something was wrong. He was walking through the ship's common area when he saw one of the young Zephyrians sitting alone in a corner. The young alien's light patterns were dim and flickering, almost like a broken neon sign. Jake had learned enough about Zephyrian body language to know this meant distress. "Dr. Hamilton," Jake called to the xenobiologist who was nearby. "Is that normal?" Lisa looked at the young alien and frowned. "No, it's not. The young ones should have bright, steady patterns. This one looks sick or injured." Jake approached the young Zephyrian carefully. "Are you all right?" The alien looked up at him with large, dark eyes. Its light patterns flickered. Even more weakly, the translator caught some of the meaning. "I am broken. My patterns are wrong. I bring shame to my people. Dr. Hamilton knelt down beside the young alien. What's your name? I am called Click Whistle in your language, but I am not worthy of a name. My light patterns are not correct. I cannot communicate properly with my own kind. Jake felt something twist in his chest. The young alien couldn't be more than a teenager by human standards. What do you mean, not correct? Click Whistle's patterns shifted to a sad purple color. I was born with a genetic defect. My lights do not make the proper patterns. Among my people, this means I cannot participate in society. I cannot mate, cannot work, cannot contribute. I am worthless. Dr. Hamilton was scanning the young alien with her medical tricorder. Commander, I'm detecting some unusual genetic markers, but this individual appears to be perfectly healthy. The difference in light patterns seems to be purely cosmetic. But it is not cosmetic to us, said a new voice. Jake turned to see Speaker of Journeys approaching. The adult Zephyrian's lights were a stern orange color. Click Whistle is defective. He cannot fulfill his role in society. We brought him on this journey because we hoped you might dispose of him humanely. Jake stared at the alien leader. Dispose of him? He cannot survive on our new world. Resources are precious, and we cannot waste them on one who cannot contribute. We thought perhaps your people might end his suffering quickly and painlessly. Dr. Hamilton stood up, her face red with anger. You want us to kill him? A perfectly healthy young person? He is not healthy by our standards, Speaker of Journeys replied. His genetic defect makes him unable to reproduce. He will never be able to communicate properly with others of his kind. He is, as you might say, a burden. Jake looked down at Click Whistle, who had curled up into a ball, his light patterns now almost completely dark. The young alien was shaking out something inside Jake snapped. He had grown up in a large family, with cousins and adopted siblings and kids from the neighborhood who had nowhere else to go. His parents had never turned away anyone who needed help. The idea of abandoning a child, any child, was completely alien to him. No, Jake said firmly. No? Speaker of Journey's lights flickered in confusion. We will not dispose of him. In human culture, we don't abandon family, and I'm declaring him family now. The Zephyrian leader's patterns shifted to a bright red. Color that Jake had learned meant extreme confusion. You cannot claim kinship with one who is not of your species, and certainly not with one who is defective. Watch me, Jake said. He knelt down beside Click Whistle and gently touched the young alien's shoulder. Hey kid, you're safe now. You're part of my crew, part of my family. Nobody's going to hurt you. Click Whistle looked up at Jake with wonder. His light patterns began to glow more brightly, shifting to colors that Jake didn't recognize, but somehow understood meant hope. Commander, Dr. Hamilton said softly, are you sure about this? Jake stood up and looked around the common area. Other crew members had gathered to watch the scene. Lieutenant Foster was there, along with Engineer Roy Chun and several others. They were all looking at him with expressions of support and understanding. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Jake said. This is what we do. This is what makes us human. We take care of our own, and this kid is now one of our own. Speaker of Journey's lights were cycling through rapid patterns that the translator couldn't keep up with. This is unprecedented. You would claim responsibility for one who cannot contribute to your society. He'll contribute, Jake said, confidently. Maybe not in the way you expect, but he'll find his place. That's what family does. We help each other find where we belong. The other Zephyrians had gathered around, their light patterns showing various degrees of confusion and concern. Jake realized he was witnessing something they had never seen before, a species that chose to care for its outcasts instead of abandoning them. Click Whistle, Jake said. Would you like to stay with us? Learn about human culture? Maybe help us understand your people better? The young alien's lights began to pulse in a pattern that was definitely not standard Zephyrian communication. But somehow Jake understood it perfectly. It meant yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. And in that moment, something changed in the galaxy. It was small, just one human commander making a simple decision to show compassion to an alien child. But it would grow into something much larger, something that would challenge every assumption about what it meant to be family, to be human, to be alive in a universe full of different species. Jake Morrison had just declared war on the concept of disposable people, and he didn't even know it yet. 3 months had passed since Commander Jake Morrison declared Click Whistle as family. The news had spread across human space like wildfire. Every colony, every ship, every outpost had heard the story of the human commander who adopted an alien child that his own people wanted to throw away. Captain Betty Rogers was thinking about that story as she guided her cargo hauler, the new Phoenix, through the asteroid belt near Titan Station. She had read Jake's report at least 10 times. Something about it had touched her heart in a way she couldn't explain. "Captain," called out her engineer, Roy Chun, from the sensor. "Station. I'm picking up something strange on the long-range scanners. Looks like a ship, but it's not moving." Betty frowned and walked over to look at the display. "Pirates?" "No, ma'am. The energy signature is all wrong. This looks like one of those crystalline vessels we've heard about, but it's dead in space." The crystalline beings were a mystery to most humans. They were made of living crystal, communicated through vibrations, and rarely interacted with other species. Betty had never seen one in person, but she'd heard they were beautiful and cold. Any distress signals? That's the weird part. There are life signs, but no distress calls. It's like they're just ... sitting there. Betty made a decision that would change her life. Set course for that ship. Let's see if they need help. As the new Phoenix approached the crystalline vessel, Betty could see it was damaged. Parts of its crystal hull were cracked and dark. Through the transparent sections, she could see figures moving inside. "They're alive," Roy said, studying his instruments. "But their ship's power is almost gone. Life support is failing." Betty opened a communication channel. "Crystalline vessel, this is Captain Betty Rogers of the human ship New Phoenix. Do you require assistance?" The response came as a series of musical tones that the computer translated. Slowly, "We ... are outcasts. We were banished from our homeworld. We do not expect help from warmbloods. Why were you banished?" Betty asked. The answer came after a long pause. "We feel too much. We are defective. Crystalline beings should be logical and cold. We experience emotions like pain, joy, and fear. This makes us worthless to our people." Betty felt her heart skip a beat. Here was another species throwing away their own people for being different. She thought about Jake Morrison and Click Whistle, and she knew what she had to do. "Well, you're not worthless to us. Prepare for rescue operations. You do not understand," the crystalline voice sang back. "We are damaged goods. We have no value." "Let me decide what has value," Betty said firmly. "Roy, get the rescue pods." "Ready? We're bringing them aboard." Roy looked at her with surprise. "Captain, are you sure? We don't know anything about their biology. I know they're in trouble, and they need help. That's enough for me." The rescue operation took 4 hours. The crystalline beings were unlike anything Betty had ever seen. They stood 8 feet tall and looked like walking statues made of blue and green crystal. Light moved through their bodies like slow lightning, and when they spoke, their voices sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. There were 7 of them, all outcasts from their homeworld. Their leader, who called himself Harmony and Discord, explained their situation as they sat in the new Phoenix's cargo bay. "We were born wrong," he said, his crystal body pulsing with soft colors. "Normal crystalline beings do not feel emotions. We think only in logic and reason. But we seven, we feel happiness, sadness, anger, love. This made us dangerous to our society." "Dangerous how?" Betty asked. "Emotions are chaos. They disrupt the perfect order of crystalline civilization. When we feel joy, it spreads to others. When we feel sadness, it makes others question their contentment. We were poisoning our people with feeling." Roy shook his head. "So they threw you out for having emotions? They gave us a ship and told us to find somewhere else to die. We have been drifting for many cycles, waiting for our power to fail." Betty stood up and walked over to Harmony and Discord. The crystalline being towered over her, but she looked up at him without fear. "Well, you're not going to die today. I'm Captain Betty Rogers, and I'm declaring you and your people as family. You're under human protection now." The crystalline beings began to glow brighter, their colors shifting rapidly. Betty realized they were experiencing surprise and hope. "You would do this for us?" Harmony and Discord asked. "Even though we are not of your species?" "Especially because you're not of my species," Betty replied. "That's what makes it matter." Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, engineer Roy Chun's cousin Danny Walsh was having his own encounter with discarded aliens. Danny commanded a small patrol ship called the Star Dancer, and he was investigating reports of unusual activity. Near the edge of human space, what he found was a single aquatic being floating in a makeshift escape pod. The aquatics were a water-dwelling species known for their ability to change colors and communicate through skin patterns. This one was barely alive, and her color-changing ability seemed to be broken. "Please," she whispered when Danny brought her aboard. "I know I am worthless, but please let me die with dignity." Danny knelt beside the medical bay, where she lay in a tank of salt water. "What's your name?" "I was called Ripple of Joy, but I no longer deserve that name. I was born without the ability to change colors properly. Among my people, this means I cannot communicate, cannot find a mate, cannot contribute to society. I was left to die in the deep currents." Danny looked at her closely. Even without proper color changing, she was beautiful. Her skin had a natural, iridescent quality that reminded him of pearls. "You look fine to me. You do not understand. Without color change, I am like a human without a voice. I am incomplete." "Maybe incomplete to your people, but not to mine," Danny said. "I've got a crew position open for a navigation specialist. Interested?" Ripple of Joy stared at him with large silver eyes. "You would give me work? Purpose?" "I'm giving you family," Danny said simply. "That comes with work, purpose, and a whole lot of people who will fight for you if anyone tries to hurt you." Back on Earth, Dr. Susan Blake was documenting these incidents in her research lab. As the head of the new Interspecies Relations Department, she was tracking what the media had started calling the Morrison Effect. "Computer, display statistics on human-alien adoption cases," she said. The holographic display showed a map of human space with glowing dots representing each incident. In just 3 months, there had been 47 cases of humans declaring abandoned aliens as family. The numbers were growing every day. Her assistant, Lieutenant Gary Thompson, looked up from his datapad. "Dr. Blake, I'm getting reports from the outer colonies. It's not just individual cases anymore. Some ship captains are actively seeking out outcasts from other species." Susan nodded. "It's becoming a movement. Humans are starting to see abandoned aliens as an opportunity rather than a problem. The alien governments are starting to notice too," Gary added. "The Zephyrian Council has filed a formal complaint about us collecting their defectives. Crystalline Collective is demanding the return of their banished citizens." "And what's our government's response?" The president is backing the captains. He issued a statement yesterday saying that Earth will not return any being to a society that considers them disposable. Susan smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen. Humans were doing what they did best, taking care of the underdog. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from Jake Morrison on the Discovery. She opened the video link and saw the commander sitting in his quarters with Click Whistle beside him. The young Zephyrian was wearing a human uniform, and his light patterns were brighter than ever. "Dr. Blake," Jake said, "I wanted to give you an update on Charlie." "Charlie? That's what we call Click Whistle now. He chose it himself. Anyway, he's been incredible. His unique light patterns have helped us solve 3 major engineering problems. Turns out what his people saw as a defect is actually a gift." Charlie's lights pulsed in what Susan had learned was the equivalent of a smile. "I am happy to be useful, Dr. Blake. My human family has taught me that being different is not the same as being broken. How are the other Zephyrians reacting?" Susan asked. Jake's expression grew serious. "That's the problem. Speaker of Journeys and his delegation left Earth last week, but not before demanding that we return Charlie to them. They said we were interfering with their natural selection process." "What did you tell them?" "I told them that Charlie is a human citizen now, and if they want him back, they'll have to go through Earth's legal system." That didn't go over well. Susan felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you think they'll try to take him by force?" "I don't know. But I do know that if they try, they'll have to go through every human in the fleet first." As the video call ended, Susan realized that humanity was about to face its first major interspecies crisis. But it wasn't a crisis of resources or territory. It was a crisis of values. Humans had decided that no sentient being should be thrown away for being different. The rest of the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you challenged that belief. In the cargo bay of the New Phoenix, Harmony in Discord was teaching Betty Rogers' crew how to sing in crystal harmonics. The sound was beautiful, like a church organ made of starlight. 6 months after the first adoption, human colonies across the galaxy were changing in ways no one had expected. On New Geneva Colony, the changes were most visible. Lieutenant Amy Foster walked through the colony's main street, marveling at how different everything looked. Crystalline beings worked alongside humans in the shops, their bodies glowing with gentle light that made the whole street seem magical. Aquatic beings in mobile water suits helped tend the hydroponic gardens. There, knowledge of fluid dynamics improving crop yields by 30%. And there was Charlie, the young Zephyrian who started it all. He was working with a team of human engineers on a new communication system. His unusual light patterns, once considered defective, were helping them create the most advanced translation device ever built. "Amy," called a voice behind her. She turned to see Dr. Lisa Hamilton, approaching with her data tablet in hand. "I need to show you something important." They walked to the colony's research center, where Lisa had been studying the effects of human-alien integration. Inside her lab, holographic displays showed charts and graphs that made Amy's head spin. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to a particular chart. "Colony productivity is up 45% since we started integrating alien family members. Crime rates are down 60%. And happiness surveys show the highest satisfaction ratings in human colonial history." Amy studied the numbers with amazement. "How is that possible?" "The aliens aren't just adapting to us, Amy. They're making us better. The crystalline beings help us think more clearly and stay calm under pressure. The aquatic people teach us patience and fluid problem-solving. Charlie and the other Zephyrians help us see patterns we never noticed before." "What about the opposition?" Amy asked. She knew not everyone was happy about the changes. Lisa's expression grew serious. "That's the problem. Governor Paul Anderson on Mars is leading a growing movement against what he calls genetic contamination. He's convinced half the Mars colonies that we're weakening humanity by mixing with aliens. Paul Anderson stood in his office on Mars, looking out at the red landscape through reinforced windows. Behind him, a group of colony leaders listened as he outlined his concerns. "We're losing what makes us human," Paul said, his voice filled with conviction. "These aliens are changing our culture, our values, our very identity. We used to be explorers and conquerors. Now we're becoming caretakers for every broken alien in the galaxy." Colonel Frank Martinez, head of Mars Security, nodded in agreement. "Sir, I've reviewed the reports from New Geneva. The human children there are learning alien languages before they learn proper English. They're adopting alien customs and behaviors. In one generation, we might not recognize our own species." "Exactly," Paul replied. "That's why I'm issuing an executive order. No alien adoptions will be permitted in Mars colonies. Any aliens currently residing here must be relocated to other territories." But Paul's order created an immediate problem. There were already 12 adopted aliens living on Mars, including a young crystalline being named Clear Note, who worked in the colony's medical center. She had been abandoned by her people for being too emotional, but her empathic abilities made her the best trauma counselor the colony had ever seen. When the order came down to relocate Clear Note, the medical staff refused to comply. Dr. Nancy Wilson, the chief medical officer, stood in Paul's office with her arms crossed. "You'll have to go through me first," she said firmly. "Clear Note has saved 17 lives this month alone. She can sense emotional distress in patients before they even know they're in trouble. Removing her would be medical malpractice. She's not human," Paul argued. "We can't become dependent on alien abilities." "She's family," Nancy shot back. "And family doesn't abandon family." The confrontation on Mars was just the beginning. Similar conflicts erupted on colonies throughout human space. Some communities embraced their new alien family members, while others rejected them completely. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, something else was happening that would change everything. Captain Alana Rodriguez commanded the deep space exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. She was investigating reports of unusual energy signatures near the Vorthan border when her sensors detected something alarming. "Captain," called her communications officer, Lieutenant Steve Parker, "I'm picking up a massive fleet moving toward human space. Configuration suggests Vorthan Empire ships." Elena felt her blood turn cold. The Vorthans were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy. They believed in genetic purity above all else, and had wiped out several species they considered inferior. "Numbers?" she asked. "At least 200 vessels, sir, including battle cruisers." Elena immediately sent a priority message to Earth Command. The response came within hours from Admiral Jake Morrison himself. "Elena, we need intelligence on Vorthan intentions. Can you get closer without being detected?" "I'll try, sir, but if they're heading for our colonies..." "I know. We're mobilizing the fleet, but we need to know what we're dealing with." Elena ordered her ship closer to the Vorthan fleet, using asteroid fields for cover. What she discovered through long-range sensors made her stomach turn. The Vorthans weren't just bringing warships. They were bringing specialized equipment designed for biological warfare. Equipment meant to target specific genetic markers. "They're not planning to conquer us," Elena whispered to her first officer. "They're planning to cleanse us." Back on New Geneva, Charlie was working late in the engineering lab when his light patterns suddenly began flashing in alarm. The young Zephyrian had developed an ability to sense danger that his own people couldn't understand. Amy Foster found him there, his lights cycling through rapid patterns of fear and urgency. "Charlie, what's wrong?" she asked. "Something terrible is coming," Charlie said, his translated voice filled with worry. I can feel it in the electromagnetic fields around the colony. Death approaches. Amy immediately contacted colony security, but they found nothing on their sensors. It wasn't until Elena Rodriguez's warning reached them that they understood what Charlie had sensed. The Vorthan fleet was 3 days away from human space. Emergency meetings were called on every human world. The adopted aliens found themselves at the center of a debate that would determine their fate. In the Earth Council chambers, President Maria Santos listened as military advisors outlined humanity's options. The Vorthans have superior numbers and firepower, General Robert Hayes reported. Our best chance is to negotiate. Perhaps if we agreed to relocate the adopted aliens to neutral space. No, the voice came from the back of the room. Jake. Morrison stepped forward, still wearing his uniform from the rushed trip to Earth. We don't negotiate away family. Admiral Morrison, the president said carefully. We're talking about the survival of human civilization. Surely the lives of a few hundred aliens aren't worth risking billions of human lives. Jake looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Madam President, with respect, you're missing the point. This isn't about a few hundred aliens. This is about who we are as a species. He activated a holographic display showing footage from colonies across human space. Images of humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, protecting each other. Look at these people, Jake continued. Look at what we've become. We're not just human anymore. We're something better. We're a family that includes anyone willing to be part of it, regardless of species or origin. But the cost, General Hayes began. The cost of fighting will be high, Jake agreed. But the cost of surrendering our values will be higher. If we give up our adopted family members to save ourselves, what kind of species does that make us? Charlie stepped forward from where he had been standing with other alien representatives. His light patterns were steady and determined. Admiral Morrison is correct, Charlie said. But you must understand something else. We who have been adopted by humans will not allow ourselves to be surrendered. We have learned what family means. We will fight beside you. Harmony and Discord, the crystalline being rescued by Betty Rogers, added his crystalline voice to the discussion. Our abilities, combined with human determination, create possibilities neither species could achieve alone. Ripple of joy, the color-changing aquatic being, pulsed with patterns of agreement. We choose to stand with our human family, whatever the consequences. President Santos looked around the room at the faces of humans and aliens united in their determination. She realized that Jake Morrison was right. This wasn't about military strategy or political calculation. This was about the soul of humanity itself. Then we fight, she said simply. We fight for our family, all of our family. As the meeting ended, Amy Foster found herself walking beside Charlie through the corridors of the government building. The young Zephyrian's light patterns were calmer now, but still showed deep concern. Are you afraid? Amy asked. Charlie's lights shifted to a pattern that meant thoughtfulness. I am afraid for my human family, but I am not afraid of dying for them. Before Admiral Morrison found me, I had no purpose, no value. Now I have something worth protecting. The Vorthans are coming because of us, aren't they? Amy said, because we've been adopting aliens like you. Yes, Charlie admitted. But Amy, you must understand. The Vorthans would have come eventually anyway. They hate all diversity, all difference. The attack came at dawn on New Seattle Colony, just as Charlie had predicted. The young Zephyrians' ability to sense electromagnetic disturbances had given them 12 hours of warning, but it wasn't enough time to evacuate everyone. Captain Danny Walsh stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, the Star Dancer, watching the Vorthan fleet drop out of hyperspace like a swarm of metal locusts. 200 ships, all bristling with weapons designed to eliminate what they called genetic contamination. All human vessels. This is Vorthan Fleet Commander Zaktor, came the cold voice over the communication channels. You will surrender. All alien contamination for proper disposal, or we will cleanse your worlds ourselves. Danny looked at his navigation officer, Ripple of Joy, whose skin patterns were cycling through colors of determination and fear. 6 months ago, she had been left to die by her own people. Now she was part of his crew, his family. What's our response, Captain? Asked his weapons officer, Lieutenant Karen Brooks. Danny activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Captain Danny Walsh of the human vessel Star Dancer. Our response is simple. If you want our family members, come and take them. The first phase of the battle was chaos. The Vorthan ships were bigger and more powerful than anything in the human fleet, but they hadn't expected the level of coordination they encountered. On the surface of New Seattle, Colonel Amy Foster coordinated the defense from the colony's command center. Beside her, Charlie worked frantically at a communication console, his unusual light patterns allowing him to coordinate with every adopted alien across the planet. Amy, Charlie said, his lights flashing urgently. The crystalline beings in Sector 7 are reporting Vorthan landing craft. They're not just bombing us. They're coming down to hunt specifically for adopted aliens. Amy grabbed her radio. All units, be advised. The Vorthans are conducting ground operations. Priority is protecting civilian populations, especially our alien family members. What the Vorthans discovered on the ground surprised them. They had expected to find aliens hiding while humans protected them. Instead, they found integrated communities where the distinction between human and alien had become meaningless dot in the medical district. Dr. Nancy Wilson worked alongside Clearnote, the empathic crystalline being. When Vorthan soldiers broke into the hospital, they found humans and aliens working together to save wounded civilians without regard for species. Surrender the crystal aberration, demanded the Vorthan squad leader. Pointing his weapon at Clearnote, Nancy stepped between them. She's a doctor. She's saving lives. She is genetic contamination that must be eliminated. She's family, Nancy said firmly. Around her, the entire medical staff formed a protective circle around Clearnote. And family protects family. The Vorthan soldiers were confused. They had been told that humans were being manipulated by alien parasites. They hadn't expected to find humans willingly dying to protect aliens. In space, the battle was taking an unexpected turn. The human ships were smaller and weaker, but they were fighting with a coordination that the Vorthans couldn't understand. On the bridge of the UES Discovery, Admiral Jake Morrison watched as his adopted son, Charlie, coordinated communication between 30 different ships. The young Zephyrian's unique light patterns were being transmitted across subspace, creating a communication network more advanced than anything the human fleet had ever used. Admiral, called his tactical officer, the Vorthans are breaking formation. They can't adapt to our coordination patterns. Jake smiled grimly. They're used to fighting individual species. They've never faced a family before. The real turning point came when Harmony and Discord, the emotional crystalline, being rescued by Betty Rogers, made a discovery that changed everything. Working from the new Phoenix, Harmony had been analyzing Vorthan communications when he detected something that made his crystal body pulse with excitement. Captain Rogers, he sang in his wind chime voice, I have found something important about our enemies. Betty rushed to the communication station where Harmony was working. What did you find? The Vorthans are not united as they appear. There are dissenting voices in their fleet. Some of their crew members are questioning this attack. Are you? Sure. My emotional sensitivity allows me to detect stress patterns in their transmissions. Many Vorthans are uncomfortable with what they are doing. They have been told lies about humans and our adopted family members. Betty realized the implications immediately. Can you identify which ships have the most dissenting voices? Yes. And perhaps more importantly, I can broadcast emotional resonance that will amplify their doubts. Within an hour, Harmony and Discord was working with Charlie and Ripple of Joy to create something unprecedented. A tri-species communication that could reach into the hearts and minds of their enemies. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the Vorthen fleet, crew members began to question their orders. They heard not propaganda about genetic contamination, but the actual voices of adopted aliens speaking about their human families. Charlie's light patterns carried the story of how Admiral Morrison had saved him from death and given him purpose. Harmony's crystalline song told of how Captain Rogers had rescued him and his companions from the void. Ripple of Joy's color patterns showed the beauty of a family that chose love over genetic purity. On the Vorthen command ship, Fleet Commander Zaktor watched in growing alarm as his carefully maintained fleet began to fracture. Ship after ship was reporting communication failures, but he knew the truth. His crews were listening to the alien broadcasts and beginning to doubt their mission. "Sir," reported his communication officer, "the cruiser Purity's Edge is requesting permission to withdraw from combat." Denied. They will maintain position or be destroyed as traitors. But the defections were spreading faster than Zaktor could contain them. The emotional resonance from Harmony and Discord was affecting even hardened Vorthen soldiers, making them question everything they had been taught about genetic superiority. On New Seattle's surface, the tide of battle was turning. Vorthen ground. Forces found themselves facing not just human resistance, but aliens fighting alongside their adopted families with desperate courage. In the colony's industrial sector, a squad of Vorthen soldiers cornered a group of human workers and their aquatic colleague, Flow Like Water. The alien had been abandoned by his people for being unable to change colors properly, but his knowledge of fluid dynamics had made him invaluable to the colony's water management systems. "Surrender the defective aquatic," the Vorthen leader demanded. The human workers, led by Foreman Jack Thompson, formed a protective wall around Flow Like Water. "He's not defective. He's family. You would die for an alien aberration?" "We'd die for family," Jack replied simply. "That's what family means." The Vorthen soldiers hesitated. They had been told that humans were weak, that they would abandon their alien pets when faced with real danger. But everywhere they went, they found humans willing to fight and die for beings that weren't even their own species. High above the planet, Admiral Morrison received a communication that changed everything. It was from Captain Elena Rodriguez on the horizon's edge, who had been monitoring Vorthen internal communications. "Admiral, you need to hear this. I'm picking up rebellion in the Vorthen fleet. At least 40 ships are refusing orders. Some are actively turning on their own command vessels." Jake looked at Charlie, whose light patterns were pulsing with exhaustion but determination. "Son, are you doing this?" "Not just me, Admiral Dad," Charlie replied, using the human term of endearment he had learned. "All of us adopted ones are working together. We are showing them what family means." The climax came when Fleet Commander Zaktor, faced with a fleet in open rebellion, made a desperate decision. He ordered his remaining loyal ships to target New Seattle colony directly, intending to destroy the planet rather than allow the contamination to spread. But as the Vorthen dreadnought prepared to fire its planet-killing weapon, something unexpected happened. The cruiser Purity's Edge, commanded by a Vorthen officer who had been listening to the alien broadcasts, moved into the firing line. "This is Captain Vel Kryn of the Purity's Edge," came the transmission. "I will not allow the slaughter of innocents. Any ship that targets the planet will have to go through me first." One by one, other Vorthen ships joined the Purity's Edge, forming a protective barrier around New Seattle. The Vorthen fleet had torn itself apart, not through human weapons, but through the power of the bonds they had witnessed. Zaktor's remaining forces found themselves outnumbered by their own former allies. Faced with certain defeat, the fleet commander made one final transmission. "This is not over, humans. Your contamination will spread, and the galaxy will burn because of it." "Maybe," Admiral Morrison replied, "but it will burn with the light of family bonds, not the cold fire of genetic purity." As the Vorthan loyalist ships retreated, Jake Morrison stood on his bridge surrounded by his mixed crew of humans and adopted aliens. They had won not through superior firepower, but through something the Vorthans couldn't understand or counter: the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. Charlie's light patterns pulsed with exhaustion and triumph. "Admiral Dad, we did it. We showed them that love is stronger than hate." Jake put his hand on the young Zephyrian's shoulder. "No, son." 1 year after the Battle of New Seattle, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the assembly hall of the newly established Galactic Family Council, watching delegates from dozens of species take their seats. The council chamber was unlike anything that had ever existed before. Traditional diplomatic meetings were cold, formal affairs where species sat separately and negotiated from positions of strength. This was different. Humans sat next to their adopted alien family members. Former enemies worked together on committees. The whole concept of species-based politics was becoming obsolete. Charlie, now wearing the insignia of an official translator, stood beside Jake's seat. The young Zephyrian had grown in confidence over the past year, and his unique light patterns had become the foundation for a new universal communication system that was being adopted across the galaxy. "The council will come to order," announced President Maria Santos, who had been elected as the first chairman of the new organization. "Today we address the petition from the Hegemony Coalition." The Hegemony Coalition was made up of species that still believed in genetic purity and traditional social orders. They had demanded that the council be dissolved and that all adopted aliens be returned to their original species for proper disposal. Speaker of Journeys, the same Zephyrian leader who had originally wanted Charlie killed, rose to address the assembly. His light patterns were stiff and formal, showing his continued discomfort with the situation. "Honored delegates," he began, "the Zephyrian government maintains that the human practice of collecting our defective individuals undermines our social stability. We demand the return of all Zephyrian citizens, including the one called Click Whistle." Jake stood up, and Charlie's light patterns immediately shifted to supportive colors. "With respect, Speaker of Journeys, Charlie is no longer a Zephyrian citizen. He became a human citizen through the adoption process. More importantly, he chose to be here." "Choice is irrelevant," Speaker of Journeys replied. "Genetic defectives cannot make proper decisions about their own welfare." Before Jake could respond, Charlie stepped forward. Over the past year, he had learned to speak not just in light patterns, but in multiple languages. His voice was clear and confident. "Speaker of Journeys, I respect your position, but I must disagree. You are correct that I am genetically different from other Zephyrians, but you are wrong about what that means." Charlie's light patterns began to pulse in a rhythm that was definitely not standard Zephyrian communication. Yet somehow everyone in the room understood what he was saying through the patterns alone. "My light patterns were called defective because they could not communicate traditional Zephyrian concepts, but they can communicate new concepts that bridge different species. My supposed weakness has become a strength that serves the entire galaxy." Dr. Lisa Hamilton, now the head of interspecies medical research, stood to add her findings. "The genetic variations that species call defects often represent evolutionary advantages. We've discovered that 90% of adopted aliens possess abilities that are superior to their baseline species in specific areas." She activated a holographic display showing medical data. "Clear Note's emotional sensitivity makes her the most effective trauma counselor we've ever encountered. Harmony and discord's emotional resonance can calm violent conflicts before they escalate. Ripple of Joy's pattern recognition abilities have revolutionized our navigation systems. Captain Betty Rogers, now commanding the first integrated fleet, added her perspective. These individuals weren't defective. They were the next step in their species' evolution. Their own people just couldn't see it. The debate continued for hours, but Jake could see that the council was reaching a consensus. The evidence was overwhelming. The adopted aliens weren't burdens or charity cases. They were individuals whose unique abilities had enhanced every community they joined. During a recess, Jake walked through the council building's corridors with Charlie. The halls were filled with mixed groups of humans and aliens working together, their conversations a blend of spoken words, light patterns, color changes, and crystalline harmonics. "How do you feel about all this?" Jake asked his adopted son, Charlie's. Light patterns shifted to a warm, contented glow. "I feel grateful, Admiral Dad, but more than that, I feel proud. We've shown the galaxy something new." "What's that?" "That worth isn't determined by genetic perfection or social conformity. Worth comes from what you contribute to your family, your community, your universe." They were interrupted by Lieutenant Amy Foster, who approached with an urgent message. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Vorthan rebel fleet. Captain Vel Kryn is requesting permission to address the council." Jake raised an eyebrow. The Vorthan officer who had turned against his own fleet during the battle and knew. Seattle had become a symbol of the changes sweeping the galaxy. "What does he want to say?" "He's not alone, sir. Apparently, there are delegations from 12 different species wanting to join the council. All of them have outcasts they've been throwing away for generations." When the council reconvened, Captain Vel Kryn stood before the assembly. The Vorthan's appearance was striking. His people were tall and pale, with silver skin and eyes like mirrors. But unlike other Vorthans, Vel Kryn wore decorations that mixed traditional Vorthan designs with symbols from other species. "Honored delegates," Vel Kryn began in accented but clear English. "I come before you not as a conqueror, but as a student. The Battle of New Seattle taught me something my people had forgotten. We are all stronger when we embrace our differences, rather than eliminate them." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "For centuries, my people cast out anyone who showed empathy or emotional connection. We called them weak. But I have learned that they were not weak. They were the key to our people's future." Vel Kryn activated his own holographic display, showing data from the Vorthan worlds. Since the battle, 17 Vorthan colonies have requested permission to recall their outcasts. They have seen the reports of what happened when humans adopted the abandoned, and they want to try a different approach. The council chamber buzzed with surprised conversations. Even Jake was amazed by this development. "Captain Vel Kryn," President Santos said, "are you saying that the Vorthan Empire wants to join the Galactic Family Council?" "Not the Empire, Madam President, but many individual Vorthan worlds do. We want to learn what humans know about building families across species lines." Over the following days, the Council heard similar requests from species after species. The Aquatic Collective wanted to recall their color-deficient outcasts. The Crystalline Collective was reconsidering their policy of banishing emotional individuals. Even some Zephyrian worlds were questioning their treatment of light pattern variants. Dr. Susan Blake, now the Council's chief anthropologist, presented her final report on what she called the Morrison effect. When Commander Morrison first declared Click Whistle as family, he started a chain reaction that has transformed galactic civilization, she explained. But the effect goes beyond just adoption. It's created a new understanding of what strength means. She showed footage from integrated colonies across human space. Traditional civilizations measure strength through uniformity and genetic purity. But these communities measure strength through diversity and mutual support. The results speak for themselves. The data was impressive. Integrated communities showed higher innovation rates, better problem-solving abilities, stronger resistance to disasters, and greater overall happiness than any monospecies civilization in recorded history. The secret, Dr. Blake continued, is that humans didn't just adopt these aliens. They created true families. And family bonds, it turns out, are the strongest force in the universe. The final vote was unanimous. The Galactic Family Council was officially established as an alternative to traditional species-based government. Any being, regardless of origin, could petition for adoption into the human family or request help, establishing similar family structures in their own communities. The ceremony concluded, Jake found himself standing with Charlie on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Ships from dozens of species filled the space around the station, their crews working together in ways that would have been impossible just 2 years ago. "Do you think it will last?" Charlie asked, his light patterns thoughtful. Jake considered. "The question. I think it will grow. We've shown the galaxy that family isn't about blood or genetics or species. It's about choice and commitment and love. Once you understand that, you can't go back to the old ways." Charlie's patterns shifted to a warm, golden glow. The Zephyrians have a saying, "Light travels fastest when it has a destination." I think we've given everyone in the galaxy a destination worth traveling toward. Jake smiled and put his arm around his adopted son's shoulders. In the distance, he could see the new Phoenix docking with the station, bringing Betty Rogers and her crew of integrated species. The Star Dancer was approaching from another direction, with Danny Walsh and Ripple of Joy returning from a diplomatic mission to the outer rim. All around them, the galaxy was learning what Jake Morrison had discovered that day on the UES Discovery. When humans decree your family, you don't just gain their protection.